Hey diverse book lovers, welcome to this month's episode of Gettin Lit, a monthly podcast dedicated to diverse books coming out for the month. Today, we're going to be talking about all the books you should pick up in April, rain or shine. My name is Lala, and you can find me on Instagram at ThisBlackGirlReads. And on today's show, we'll discuss a book that looks at generations of Black women in Harlem who sell pieces of their bodies. We'll talk about Black love and magical folktales of West Africa. We'll check out one man's story of how he navigates being the only person of color in predominantly white spaces. And we'll talk about the Freedom Riders of 1961. So I can't wait to get started. But first, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Libro FM. Libro FM makes it possible for you to buy audiobooks through your local bookstore, giving you the power to keep money within your local economy, create jobs, and make a difference in your community. And the best of all is that you get your first audiobook for free. This is one of my favorite apps because I can shop from my local bookstore, shout out to Knowledge Bookstore, and the money goes straight to them. It is so needed during this time, so check them out. You can find out more at librofm.com or check out the link in my description. So now, let's get lit! So the first book I'm talking about today is Call Baby by Morgan Jerkins. So if you don't know Jerkins, then you are definitely missing out. She is the author of 2 best-selling nonfiction books. She wrote one of my favorite essay collections entitled This Will Be My Undoing, and that came out, I think, in 2018. And last year, she came out with Wandering in Strange Lands, which was a look at the Great Migration and its impact on her family. So her new book, Call Baby, is her first work of fiction, and I was so excited to read it. And it didn't disappoint, by the way. So Call Baby follows a family in Harlem that possess Call, which is a layer of skin that offers healing powers. I didn't know anything about Call before I read this book. And in the book, we get to see how they use this Call to sell for ridiculous amounts of money to help people with any kind of sickness or plague. They buy their Call and then they wear it around their necks just for like extra protection. So the story begins with Layla, who is a young woman in Harlem, and she is married, she has a beautiful brownstone, she has a great life, and the only thing missing is a child that she desperately wants. But after several unsuccessful pregnancies, she eventually turns to the Melisons, which is the old powerful family who are known for their Call. And she makes a deal with them to get a piece of their Call that she can wear to protect her unborn child. So the Melisons decide that she's not their ideal client, and the deal falls through, and she then ends up a few months later delivering a stillborn child. And that sends her on a spiral. She loses her marriage, she loses her home, and she goes a little bit crazy, right? So meanwhile, also in her family, in Layla's family, another baby is born with Call. And we follow this child and we follow this Melison family who sell their Call to basically just wealthy white people. And the book follows how everyone connects and how this Call is kind of the foundation of a community and what it does to the family, right? So the book moves a few different point of views, which would normally really annoy me, but I think in this story it added so much value because we got to see the story through different characters. I don't want to give too much away, but this book touched on racism, it touched on generational trauma, gentrification, among several other important topics. I just really love the writing, and I love the way the story so naturally unfolded. I read it in probably a day and a half because I couldn't put it down. I needed to know what happened. It kept me turning the page. It kept me wanting more. And I truthfully think that everyone who reads this book will be talking about it for a long time to come. And for me personally, it will stick with me for a long time. So this one is called Call Baby by Morgan Jerkins, and it comes out on April 6th. So the second book that we're talking about today is Love in Color, Mythical Tales from Around the World, retold by Bolu Babalola. So this is a debut collection by Bolu Babalola, and what drew me to this book was definitely the gorgeous, gorgeous cover. It is so pretty, and it represents Black love that I think we need to see more of. So I was instantly drawn to this book. So the book itself retells beautiful love stories from history and mythology, all with new details. It focuses on magical folktales of West Africa, as well as reimagined Greek myths, ancient legends from the Middle East, and stories from long, long erased places. So Babalola explores the various colorations of love through all of these stories, and what I loved most about this collection is that she explored the stories from a female perspective by placing the thoughts, desires, and experiences of the female protagonist at the front and center of each story, which I think is so, so refreshing. With really richly drawn characters like a young businesswoman attempting a great leap in her career, and even greater one in her love life, and a powerful Ghanaian spokeswoman forced to decide whether she should uphold her family politics or be true to her heart. We get to see different facets of love and we get to explore them. And I love, love, love that. There were a few stories that I think I could have done without, but overall, I think the collection is very captivating. It's an easy and nice and warm kind of read. And I think it's a very, very strong debut. So this one is called Love in Color, Mythical Tales from Around the World, retold by Bolu Babalola, and it comes out on April 13th. So the next book that we're going to be talking about is Sure I'll Be Your Black Friend by Ben Felipe. So I was so excited to get this book because I just finished reading Ben Felipe's YA novel, Charming is a Verb, with my son, and I am definitely a fan. I just love it. So in this book, Felipe discusses in essay format being the only Black person in predominantly white spaces. What I loved about this book is that it was actually really funny. There were moments that I laughed out loud, and I just loved his wit and his candor. I thought it leaped off the page, and it really kept me engaged and reading. But I also think that it was also very powerful too, because his messages were really powerful. So Felipe discusses growing up in Haiti and then in Montreal, where he was one of the only Black people in his school, and then being a Black man in America after moving there for college and essentially working there. So he discusses his experiences. He discusses very candidly about the murders of Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, Elijah McClain, and George Floyd, and the anger and uncertainty he felt in the aftermath of those events. One thing that I love is that he breaks it down, and you can prepare to feel a little bit uncomfortable at times with the way that he breaks it down, especially as he touches on the microaggressions that he experienced during that time. I think that this is a pretty good book for anyone wanting to add or beginning their anti-racist reading list. It is easy to read, but it is filled with tons and tons of great information. So this one is called Sure I'll Be Your Black Friend, Notes from the Other Side of the Fist Bump by Ben Felipe, and it comes out on April 27th. So the last book I'm going to be talking about today is called Buses Are Coming, Memoir of a Freedom Rider by Charles Person and Richard Rooker. So Buses Are Coming is a stunning memoir of Charles Person and Richard Rooker, who share the details events of the first Freedom Riders. So let me first say that this book was so very emotional, and I feel like you have to be in the frame of mind to read it, because if you're not ready for it, you might put it down. So Charles Person, who grew up poor in Atlanta and experienced segregation and discrimination firsthand, goes on to study at Morehouse College, and while there, he's inspired by the Greensboro sit-ins to do something. So he applies to be part of this first Freedom Ride. So these Freedom Riders are made up of Black men and women and their white allies, both old and young, and they board these buses wanting nothing more than to be treated as equals. Some have been in the fight for years and years, while Charles Person, who took up the call at just 18, is the youngest Freedom Rider of the 1961, and he's going into this just wanting to make a change. So 2 buses proceed through Virginia, North and South Carolina to Georgia, where they're greeted by Dr. Martin Luther King, and finally go on to Alabama. There, the Freedom Riders find their answer: no. Southern states would continue to disregard federal law and use violence to enforce racial segregation. One bus was burned down to a shell, its riders narrowly escaping, and the second, which was the one that Charles was in, was set upon by a mob that beat several of the riders nearly to death. So the book follows these Freedom Riders and their experience as they travel on their journey and the attacks that almost kill them. The book is very hard to read at times, but I love, love, love the details and being able to experience everything through Mr. Person's eyes as he recounts it. Although they do not get to complete their ride, I think that these brave men and women set a movement in action that in many ways is still happening right now and continues today. So this one is such a great illustration of one man's recounting of the events that took place in 1961. And I really, really enjoyed this book. As I said, it is sometimes very hard to read at times, but it is so, so worth it because I learned so much and I got a new perspective that I didn't have before. So this one is called Buses Are Coming, a memoir of Freedom Rider by Charles Person and Richard Rooker. And this comes out on April 27th. And that's it for our show today. Thank you so much for listening to the Gettin Lit podcast. I am your host, Lala, and you can find me on Instagram at This Black Girl Reads. Don't forget to jump over to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to leave a rating or review to get the podcast in front of more eyes. It's so much appreciated. And I would love to know what you guys are reading next. And if you picked up any of these books, remember all the links are in the show notes. Thanks for getting lit with me today. And remember, if you're reading what everyone else is reading, then you'll probably think the way everyone else is thinking.